Hello and welcome to a very special New York Knicks beat report. Along with Kris Pursiainen, I'm Colin Loughran. We've had you covered all year long. A lot of news to get to this afternoon. But first and foremost, Kris, how are you doing today?
Oh, busy week, Colin. Finals week here at Fordham University, and as a senior, it's definitely a busy one. And lots of basketball as well. The in-season tournament just wrapped up. Fordham men's basketball just won at the Barclays Center. You were on the call for that one, and it's been a real busy last couple weeks, but the best kind of busy. And I always say busy's better than bored. So take
Most
it.
certainly. Today, Tuesday, December 12th, the New York Knicks at this time 13-9, sixth in the Eastern Conference, coming off of a nice 136 to 130 win over the Toronto Raptors. I call it a nice win because there was some room for improvement, but notably, it was the team's first game without big man Mitchell Robinson under center. Robinson will be out for 8 to 10 weeks. He's going to have to undergo left ankle surgery. A huge loss for the Knicks indeed, Kris. He's been having one of his best seasons from a statistical standpoint, was averaging 5.3 offensive rebounds per game, 1.3 blocks per game, a staunch rim protector for a New York team that really needed him to be all of that and more in some cases. It's going to be hard to try and play at a high level without that type of center anchoring them, but Isaiah Hartenstein filled his shoes nicely to close out yesterday's game against the Raptors. Room for improvement as far as Jericho Sims is concerned. Definitely not time to hit the panic button, but there is a level of concern.
Yeah, I mean, Colin, a quarter of the way through the season, we both thought would be a great time to catch up about this Knickerbocker squad. We had no idea we would have such unfortunate news to discuss right at the top of the show, given the loss of Robinson for the team. But for me, it comes down to, you know, how you can use these next 8 to 10 weeks to learn about yourself as a team, to execute still on your game plan and show yourselves the kind of perseverance that you can have. Maybe you didn't know you could get through moments like these. But the thing with Robinson is they lost him last year for a little bit. So they actually have sustained stretches like this before. And it's unfortunate when he goes down. He's so productive for the team. You nailed it, right? The offensive rebounding is a level of dominance in that statistical category that hasn't been seen in the NBA since Jordan's Bulls were three-peating. When you take a look at Robinson's impact, I think it's so microcosmic of this Knicks season. Finally, continuity and working together, the same group, the same coach, the same stars, pretty much growing, the young players growing, vets swapping in and out. And, as the young players get better over time, you need vets that fill different roles, more complementary roles, right? A Dante DiVincenzo as opposed to a Kemba Walker or an Evan Fournier or an Alec Burks, a Josh Hart as opposed to a Bobby Portis or a Marcus Morris. You need more complementary players than you do on-ball guys, right? But the Knicks are at a point where the center spot, they have one of the best center rooms, if you want to, like football, you put it that way, center rooms in the NBA with Robinson and Hartenstein. Hartenstein, a starting caliber center in his own right. I've said since last season he's a top 14 to 16 center in the NBA. That might be ambitious, but I think this upcoming stretch will show you a lot more of that level of play. Also, guys like Holmgren, Wembanyama getting better, and eventually playing the five will knock him right out of there. But for now, I still think he's definitely a top 20 center. And the reason is because of what he showed last night against the Toronto Raptors. And I think that game, Colin, to use the word again, served as a good microcosm of what changes you're going to see, what differences you're going to notice in the New York Knicks play in Robinson's absence. For example, 18 assists at the half, 33 assists over the course of the game. More than the Knicks probably have had, maybe even going back to last season. So that is a level of moving the ball that you don't see from them a lot, especially just because this Thibodeau offense ends up being pretty isocentric. And whether you want to say it's because of Thibodeau or the personnel, is just how it shakes out. I'm trying to point a finger. That's just what it is. You also noticed a lot of points given up. That final score was pretty hefty. The Knicks didn't get drowned out in the offensive rebounding category.
Wasn't a great defensive game overall, though. Hence
Exactly.
why I called it a nice victory.
A high score. That's the difference. Hartenstein, Robinson. It's going to be higher scoring, but you're still going to get good defense. You're still going to get good offensive rebounding. And you see some of the passes that Hartenstein made, especially Deuce McBride is someone he finds at an uncharacteristic rate. So,
wanted to talk about this specifically, and this might be a little bit of a crazy-ish take, even though I don't think so. Not having Robinson will hurt the Knicks defensively, but having Hartenstein in there more will actually help them offensively,
oh,
in my mind.
not a hot take. It's just a fact of the matter. That's the difference in their game.
Right now, the Knicks 10th in offensive rating, 10th in defensive rating as of this morning. I think my biggest concern about losing Robinson is on the defensive end. A
Easily.
game like last night really proves that they're going to need to be a team that plays a strong brand of defense because they shot the ball absurdly well. I don't know if that's who the Knicks are going forward. Right now, the Knicks are 9th in terms of fewest turnovers per game, so I know they take care of the ball. In terms of shooting, 6th in three-point percentage. I think adding a guy like Donte DiVincenzo helps that cause.
Absolutely.
As you begin to see Quentin Grimes grow more and more, that number should stay consistent from behind the arc, which, quite frankly, is something I didn't know if the Knicks were going to be able to do heading into this season. But to get back to the point about how losing an anchor like Robinson affects this team, pace, and more pace. The NBA is going faster and faster every year. It's something about the Knicks that has concerned me for quite some time. Listen, the Knicks are 29th in terms of pace. With a guy like Hartenstein, who's a bit more mobile than Robinson, I wonder if that number could temporarily go up. I don't know if it stabilizes completely and they jump to 10th in the NBA in terms of pace. That's highly unlikely. But perhaps playing a little bit more quickly could benefit them and perhaps lessen the need for a stout rim protector like Robinson. Because let's be honest, when you're in those half-court sets on offense, that's when you're racking up offensive rebounds more and more, especially for a team like the Knicks where it's about, can you get a second opportunity? Can you get a third opportunity? I think Hartenstein could help them in terms of pace. That changes what you're able to do offensively. Guys like Grimes quickly could benefit greatly, especially in transition because they can hit open threes. They can drive towards the basket. Even someone like a Julius Randle could ultimately benefit in that sort of situation because you don't want to have to face him going downhill.
Yeah, so Colin, you said, playing more quickly could help them. I agree in both senses of that phrase. I think Emmanuel Quickley has been fantastic for them this season, and I think part of the reason for that is because he gets that second unit to play with a more elevated, a more excited pace. That's something that you saw Obi Toppin encourage as well off the bench. Now, of course, DiVincenzo and Quickley more ball handling, but they also do it. The team plays with a good pace. DiVincenzo now in the starting lineup with Grimes moving to the bench, and that's kind of where I wanted to go next. Is the Knicks made a starting lineup change immediately after the 20-game mark, which is Thibodeau's usual benchmark for making any sort of switch to things. And I think it's working out for both sides right now in regards to the New York Knicks and Quentin Grimes.
I think in terms of a playoff situation, they have to be careful with how they go about this because I really like what Grimes brings to the table defensively. It hasn't been the same this year as it was last year. Now he's starting to find his stride a bit more off the bench. I don't think that's an accident. I think after last year's success, there was an element of trying to do too much as far as Quentin Grimes is concerned. I like what DiVincenzo brings offensively. I mean, how could you not? But if Grimes continues to grow and play the way that he's played off the bench thus far, last night was a fantastic game for Quentin Grimes. I think a lot of what the Knicks were able to do well in transition last night was a product of Quentin Grimes flying all over the court. It's something to monitor. I think it's a decision that Coach Thibodeau is going to have to be careful about making because in a playoff situation, I'm not sure who I would start at the starting two, especially when you think about last year's series against Miami. Grimes was very good in some key situations against Cleveland, same sort of deal. And even if you want to harken back to this time last year, the Knicks' entire season changed once you switch the starting lineup and you put Grimes at the two.
Yep.
And that's the type of chemistry that carries over year for year. Now, it didn't start off completely on fire this season, but who knows? At some point,
Ice
it could
cold.
resurface.
I got to say, Colin, I agree with you. I was a big proponent of playing Grimes more against Miami in that playoff series, but a big reason why was because of what he brought on the court in regards to his point of attack defense and his shooting. Donte DiVincenzo is really good at those two things. So, you want to talk archetype. I think it works to have DiVincenzo start, especially he loves playing with Brunson. And for better or for worse, in my opinion, for worse, Hart has been the first sub every single game this year. And so you're going to get the Brunson, DiVincenzo, Hart lineup when that happens. That alongside Randall and Robinson has been a 5-man combo that Thibodeau has turned to close games several times this season. So to me, it kind of all works out. I wish Emmanuel Quickley was the actual 6th man in the rotation, because if you're not going to give him the chance to start over a Quentin Grimes because you think he's great off the bench, I actually like that. But then play him a lot off the bench and let him get in with the starters. Him and Brunson work so nicely together. And it feels like there's this impetus to play Brunson with DiVincenzo and Hart that just overrides what's good on the court. The Knicks talk about plus minus. They talk about net rating, whatever it is. Thibodeau always says net rating is his favorite stat that they look at. Well, Quickley leads the team in net rating this season, last season, the season before. It's every year. And net rating matters except when it doesn't, and it seems to not matter when it comes to Quickley. So you need to see him get more minutes. You'd like to see him averaging maybe 28.8 to 29.5, somewhere in that pocket per game. And you'd like to see him mixed in with the starting unit. Now, in regards to Grimes, kind of the opposite. You almost like seeing him with this second unit now. He provides them the knockdown shooting that DiVincenzo gave them. But he also kind of brings a different aspect in regards to he's a better finisher at the rim than Dante DiVincenzo. Hartenstein plays with the second unit. Hartenstein provides more space at the rim than Robinson. You get where I'm going? Grimes had a little more room inside the three-point arc to cook last night. You saw him drive to the basket. He got the ball in the corner, attacked the baseline because they committed to the shot because he's that good of a shooter, and he finished at the basket because he's a good finisher at the rim. His favorite thing to do is to dump off to a big, but that's a read that I think he got from Thibodeau in the offense. Like, I think he would love to go up with it, and he got the chance to do that last night against Toronto. So maybe a positive for Grimes to be playing with the second unit, DiVincenzo with the first unit, just because of what the role entails. You look at DiVincenzo's counting statistics, not the most inspiring analysis, I know, but they've gone down since he's been in the starting lineup. Why? Because that's what that role entails.
And getting lost in the shuffle of all this, and I can hear the cries of Knicks fans, is RJ Barrett. Because it becomes a little bit of the elephant in the room when you're concerned about trying to match up some combination of now Hartenstein with Randall and Brunson, Hart, Grimes, Quickley, plug whoever you'd like there.
Barrett didn't do a whole lot of playing in the fourth quarter last night.
He did not, and I can't blame Thibodeau for that because they won the basketball game.
Exactly, and they went with the lineup that was working for them.
This has been a frustrating year for RJ Barrett, I'd imagine. It's been a frustrating year for people that would like to see RJ Barrett succeed.
I think they have seen him succeed.
But I think there's this element of waiting for him to take the next step that hasn't happened yet, and I think that's partially why he's not necessarily trusted in those late game situations. In my mind, the one skill that he can skyrocket with if he is going to make that step and develop it is playmaking. I have said it for the last 2 years and change. If he becomes a better playmaker out of the wing, it changes what the Knicks can do offensively. It becomes a little bit more akin to what Boston is able to do offensively.
He's made passes this year that we've just never seen him make before.
You need to see more of it,
I think
though.
he's taking that leap. I think what gets him on the court in late game situations is the floor defensively. Right? Because last season, the problem, what maladied his season was his floor being so low due to the defensive effort just not being there as much as it was. Remember his second season, clamping DeRozan, Butler, Tatum in late game situations. The NBA is shouting him out for being a late game wing clamper. And then all of a sudden, Kyle Kuzma comes to the Garden and scores 40 on his head last season. Like one-on-one, RJ Barrett gave him 40 points. That's not great. And that's a clear decline. And what do I always say about defense, Colin? 51% comes from effort, just wanting it more than the other guy.
It's an inconsistent defensive output as far as Barrett is concerned.
It's been better this season.
It's been better.
I think he's played well this season.
To my point on playmaking, though, when the team is playing at the pace it's playing, I would really like to see him do more on the wing. He's had some excellent passes this season, you're right. But I also think him taking on more of that role takes some of the pressure off guys like Brunson and Randall to work off the dribble. A lot of the pacing issues come from Julius Randle will get the basketball and it's a solid 5 to 6 seconds of him trying to figure it out. And I can't blame him all the time because there's instances where the Knicks aren't moving offensively. Whereas if Barrett gets the ball in the wing and everyone's moving, perhaps you find someone backdoor. Perhaps you find someone off of a screen for a three-point shot. There's just a lot of ways that Barrett could improve and really help this team. I don't want to sound overly critical, but it's fair to expect more of someone like Barrett.
I think he's been good. And I think that as the season continues, you'll get your answers about that. Is he showing growth in the areas that Thibodeau wants? We'll see. If he is, and he still doesn't play in late game scenarios, then you know it's just about Thibodeau liking what DiVincenzo and Hart bring to the table better. Do we ever see a situation where Brunson, Grimes, Hart is the closing lineup? I think we could. I think Thibodeau has shown that he's not afraid to lean into this team has too many guys aspect. This team has too many good players. He kind of likes it. He loves good players. So
well, who wouldn't?
When Quickly's hot, he lets him play until there's like 2 minutes left, and then he'll throw Grimes in for defense. Whether I love that or not, just letting Quickly close out or just letting a Grimes close out the whole way, like I prefer that. But he does get a little malleable when someone's having a good game. He does ride the hot hand a little bit, and I do respect it.
I want to get to some potential playoff matchups. Before I do that, though, I do want to give credit to where credit is due. Julius Randle has picked up his play in a big way since what was a very lukewarm start to the year. Lukewarm is putting it mildly, to be quite frank. Almost back to averaging a double-double right now, averaging around 22 points a game, 9.6 rebounds per game, 5.4 assists per game. This is what you're going to get from Julius Randle at this point in his Knicks career. It's going to be some ups. It's going to be some downs. It's the Julius Randle experience, Chris. I didn't expect anything differently coming into this year, but man, oh man, they need the production that he's able to give them, and you're kidding yourself if you think otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, 28, 9, and 5 on 58% shooting, 41% from three over his last 7 games. Julius Randle's on a tear. This is what he does. He has the talent level to have these stretches. What you need to see is the talent level and the intersection with the diligence and discipline to bring something to the table when the shot's not falling. Okay? Because for every 7-game stretch like this, there's going to be a 3-game stretch where he shoots 32% from the field. That's not a dig. That's a law of averages. It's math. That's how things go, man. I think that in those stretches, just like we were just talking about with RJ Barrett, and it matters even more so with Julius Randle because he has that all-NBA characteristic to him. He has that trait. He has that greater age than Barrett. He has that greater experience in the NBA, more of a team leader role. You need his floor to be higher as well. You need him to bring more to the table in terms of defensive effort. It's too easy to notice when he isn't closing out in time, or what he'll do, which kills me, is he'll use his stellar athleticism to close out in time, even when anyone else would have been late. But even he didn't think he was going to make it there. And so he doesn't put his hands up until the shot's already off. Shots going up, he's next to the defender. Shots about to be released, his hands start going up. Shots out of the guy's hands, then his hands go up. It's too late. And you saw it matter the most against the Phoenix Suns. It's exactly what he did with that Devin Booker 3.
It's an experience with Julius Randle. You never know quite what you're going to get and what's going to really spark him to give that consistent discipline, that consistent effort, if I could use that term. You just don't know, because there's times where he takes the court and he's got it working early offensively, and that kind of pushes him to work harder on the defensive end. And then there's instances where nothing's clicking, the body language is off, and it's just a lost game as far as he goes. And in those type of situations, the onus becomes on Jalen Brunson and others to pick up the slack. Now, that's how the game works. It's always got to be a next man up mentality, but you'd like to have more consistency from Julius Randle. He's been good over the last couple of games or so. The Knicks are going to need him to keep on providing offensively. Without him, that's a big hole in terms of points per game, in terms of assists per game.
Especially if they want to go up against these, potential playoff matchups we're about to get into.
And you gave me the perfect kind of setup here. Right now, the Knicks, as I mentioned at the top, 6 in the Eastern Conference. The teams in front of them, the Boston Celtics, the Orlando Magic, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Indiana Pacers. Just behind the Knicks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Miami Heat, the Brooklyn Nets, the Atlanta Hawks. I want to look specifically at the top 4
The Bucks
teams
are
in
ahead
the
of them
East.
too, right?
The Bucks are ahead. They're in third.
Mm.
So I look at the top 3 teams. Boston, Orlando, Milwaukee, top 4, and Philadelphia. I would take the Knicks with Mitchell Robinson over Orlando.
Yes.
I would take the Knicks to push Philadelphia in a series with Mitchell Robinson. Here's where it gets interesting for me, and we spoke about it a little bit, in that Hartenstein can help this club offensively. I think the Knicks match up better with Boston offensively when Isaiah Hartenstein is on the court.
There are teams where that's the case. It was the case against Miami. It was the case against Miami. When you play someone who has a center like Bam Adebayo and then has such a strong perimeter defense, when everything is locked up, ultimately a guy who can just do something when the ball's in his hands has value. And Mitchell Robinson dunks. He gets offensive rebounds and dunks. But as we saw last night against the Toronto Raptors, Isaiah Hartenstein can make great passes. He can still get some offensive rebounds as part of the scheme. Hart still gets a bunch too, the other Hart. And he has a scoring aspect that Robinson doesn't. Now, if you're talking defensively, Robinson's much better than Hartenstein.
Without a
And
question.
that difference showed. And I'm not trying to present this as, Robinson just dunks. And Hartenstein he has a 10-foot push shot, so he's a better player. No, it's not that simple. But against a team like Boston or Miami, in crunch time, maybe.
Well, I think about the ways that you're going to have to potentially beat different teams. To beat the Boston Celtics, I'm not sure if the game becoming a defensive slugfest is going to benefit the Knicks all that much. There's been instances when
you get Randall taking Drew and ISO and missing every time. You get Brunson driving into 3-4 guys. It doesn't work.
I look at it. Holiday has not been a great playoff shooter. Tatum in crunch time is still questionable at this point in his career. Brown, it's the same type of deal. He can't go left all the time, if at all. In a playoff situation, the game could become a shootout. In that type of affair, you're going to need a center like Hartenstein who's a little bit more flexible. That's not a knock on Robinson. In fact, if Robinson comes back, which I would assume he would be back for a potential playoff series.
8 to 10 weeks, yeah, so 2 to 2.5 months they're expecting him.
It's more generously 10 to 12, I would say. Whenever they give you 8 to 10, I would tack on.
Reevaluate it in 8 to 10. But
right.
If you want to say January, February, after the All-Star break,
leave it at that.
Maybe would be like the first reevaluation.
I think against Boston, it will be interesting. Even if Kristaps Porzingis is there, it's an interesting series. The Knicks have played the Celtics well over the last 2 years. There's been some clunkers here and there, but they've been at least competitive. At times, they've shown some fight against the Celtics. The team that concerns me of this kind of middle of the pack fray, because we know where we stand really on Milwaukee and Philly. Those are going to be hard series to win, in my estimation. But the team that concerns me, I don't know if you share this concern, Indiana scares me a little bit because of Tyrese Halliburton. I just don't know how that matchup goes in a series-long type of deal. In one game, the Knicks can handle him. In a
Brunson
series,
can't guard Halliburton the same way Halliburton can't guard Brunson. So, it comes down to, and Brunson's the better one-on-one creator. So Tyrese is able to elevate his teammates more, but the Knicks have more talent, and the one-on-one point guard matchup isn't where the series is decided. The series will be decided by Julius Randle taking O'Shea Brissett to the rim, or Obi Toppin to the. Do you know how much Randle would love
a matchup against Obi?
Against Obi Toppin, because Obi is a fantastic offensive talent. I was speaking to an NBA talent evaluator in the last week who said that Obi probably couldn't guard me, being like me, not the NBA guy, me. And that is, to me, like, I love Obi Toppin's game. I think he's such an exciting young player, but Randall would relish that opportunity. I think that would be a matchup the Knicks would have an easy time in. Philadelphia, if you want to say Orlando's worrying because of how hungry and feisty they are, sure. But again, I think Brunson and Randall and the offensive firepower that the Knicks do have at this point with DiVincenzo in the starting lineup would pick them apart enough, and the Knicks defense would be enough against their offense where you would get like the 108-94 win every time out,
See, I wouldn't be overly concerned facing Orlando. Milwaukee, Philadelphia, for me, Indiana and Boston is where you get a little bit dicey. Here's the good part, though, if you're a Knicks fan. The teams behind New York, Cleveland, Miami, Brooklyn, Atlanta, that rounds out 1 through 10 that we've spoken about. I think the Knicks could beat any of those clubs right now. And the way the standings are, all these teams are 1-2 games apart from one another. If the Knicks get hot to end the season, if they're able to figure it out with Hartenstein, with Sims, and kind of play without Robinson effectively for a while,
just tread water here.
They could get an effective playoff matchup for them. They could get home court advantage against Cleveland. We know how that went last season.
They didn't even have home court advantage last season.
Well, but just the games that they did play at home meant
No, I'm saying that would be even.
That's true, because last year the Knicks at the 5, played Cleveland at the 4.
Even more advantageous.
I think Miami this year is different from Miami last year. I think the Knicks could beat Miami this season in the playoffs. And then Brooklyn and Atlanta.
Jaquez has been awesome, though.
That's true.
He's fun.
To give credit where credit is due.
He's fun.
For Brooklyn and Atlanta, fun and frisky, but in a playoff series, they don't concern me. Atlanta, perhaps a little bit more so.
Atlanta gave Boston a little bit of trouble last year. I think they should concern you in a playoff series. They're the kind of team where if they're the 7 seed and Orlando's the 2, they're winning.
But then if you're looking at it from a Knicks perspective, I think the Knicks should be able to handle Atlanta. Now, it's a little bit more involved with Trae Young in the equation, just knowing what he did a few years ago against the Knicks in the playoffs.
But that's,
if we're playing it chalk, the Knicks should be able to handle the Atlanta Hawks. The same thing with the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, at 5, 4.
Right, I would say 5. You're going to have the one game where Brooklyn plays lights out.
Thomas, 34.
You're gonna have the Cam Thomas or the Mikal Bridges show for one game. But overall, you have to like where you are if you're a New York Knicks fan. You're allowed to be a bit concerned without Robinson in the picture for a while. But if they can tread water, as you said, Chris, this could be a fun season down the stretch.
Absolutely, Colin. And to kind of wrap us up here with our quarter season check-in, the Knicks have an interesting stretch coming up with their schedule. So a lot of road games ahead of them, and then eventually a Christmas Day matchup. So lots of big games upcoming in this next stretch for New York. As Thibodeau will always say, they're just tests for the team upcoming.
A lot of basketball left to be played. That's going to do it for our New York Knicks special report. Be sure to follow our coverage all season long. For Kris Pursiainen, I'm Colin Loughran saying so long.